It was called the unsinkable ship, a floating palace of dreams, the largest and most luxurious ocean liner ever built. In April 1912, the RMS Titanic set sail on its maiden voyage from Southampton, England, bound for New York City. On board were over 2,000 souls, a mix of the world's wealthiest elite and hopeful immigrants seeking a new life in America. The sheer scale of the Titanic was breathtaking. It was nearly 900 feet long, as tall as an 11-story building, and boasted unheard-of luxuries like a swimming pool, a gymnasium, and opulent first-class suites. It was the pinnacle of human engineering, a symbol of a new, modern age. But in just a few short days, this magnificent vessel and many of its passengers would meet a tragic fate in the icy waters of the North Atlantic, creating a story that has captivated the world for over a century. How did the unsinkable ship sink? Let's dive deep into the mystery of the Titanic. The journey began with great fanfare and excitement. For the first few days, the voyage was smooth. Passengers enjoyed the lavish amenities, strolling the decks and dining in grand halls. The ship was making excellent time, powered by its massive engines. But as the Titanic ventured further into the Atlantic, a hidden danger lurked in the darkness. The crew had received multiple warnings from other ships about large ice fields ahead. On the night of April 14th, the sea was unusually calm, like a sheet of black glass, which ironically made it much harder to spot icebergs. A calm sea meant no waves breaking against the base of an iceberg, which would have created a visible white line of foam. The lookouts, Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee, were high up in the crow's nest, straining their eyes in the moonless night. Crucially, they were without binoculars. The ship's binoculars were locked away in a cabinet, and the key was held by an officer who had been transferred off the ship just before it sailed. A small oversight with devastating consequences. At 11:40 p.m., the unthinkable happened. Fleet spotted a massive iceberg directly in the ship's path. He rang the warning bell 3 times and telephoned the bridge, shouting the chilling words, "Iceberg, right ahead." First Officer William Murdoch, who was in command on the bridge, immediately ordered the ship to be turned hard a starboard and the engines to be reversed. It was a desperate, split-second decision. For a moment, it seemed like they might just scrape by, but the Titanic was too large and moving too fast to turn in time. The ship grazed the side of the iceberg, not with a massive, jarring crash, but with a prolonged, grinding shudder that many passengers barely even felt. Below the waterline, however, the damage was catastrophic. The iceberg had punched and buckled the steel plates along the ship's starboard side, opening up at least 5 of its 16 watertight compartments to the sea. The ship was designed to stay afloat with up to 4 compartments flooded, but with 5 breached, its fate was sealed. The unsinkable Titanic was going down. As cold seawater rushed into the forward compartments, the bow of the great ship began to dip. The initial response on board was one of confusion rather than panic. Many passengers were asleep and were only woken by the sudden stopping of the engines. Some came out on deck. Some even played with the chunks of ice that had fallen from the iceberg. The crew, led by the steadfast Captain Edward Smith, tried to maintain order. They began uncovering the lifeboats and instructing passengers to put on their life vests. But here another critical flaw was exposed. The Titanic only carried enough lifeboats for about half the people on board, roughly 1,178 people. This was actually more than the legal requirement at the time, a shocking fact that highlights the outdated safety regulations of the era. The assumption was that the lifeboats would be used to ferry passengers to a nearby rescue ship, not to evacuate everyone at once. No one ever imagined a scenario where the Titanic itself would need to be completely abandoned in the middle of the ocean. The evacuation was chaotic and fraught with problems. The women and children first protocol was followed, but inconsistently. On one side of the ship, an officer interpreted the rule as women and children only, sending away lifeboats that were less than half full. On the other side, men were allowed to board if there were no women or children waiting. This confusion, combined with the passengers' initial reluctance to leave the perceived safety of the massive liner for a small, flimsy lifeboat in the freezing dark, resulted in the first lifeboats being launched with many empty seats, As the ship's tilt became more severe, a sense of real urgency and panic began to set in. The ship's band famously played on, their music providing a surreal and courageous soundtrack to the unfolding tragedy, a final act of humanity in the face of disaster. The wireless operators, Jack Phillips and Harold Bride, frantically sent out distress signals, CKD and the new signal, SOS, hoping another ship would hear their desperate calls. The nearest ship to respond was the Carpathia, but it was about 58 miles away, and, even steaming at full speed, would take around 4 hours to reach the Titanic's location. There was another ship, the Californian, that was much closer, possibly only 10 to 20 miles away. Its crew saw the Titanic's lights and the distress rockets it was firing, but tragically, they misinterpreted them. The Californian's wireless operator had already gone to bed for the night, so they never received the SOS calls. The crew on the bridge thought the rockets were just company signals or celebratory fireworks. They simply watched as the great ship's lights flickered and eventually disappeared, unaware of the horror unfolding just over the horizon. The failure of the Californian to respond remains one of the most controversial and heartbreaking what-ifs of the Titanic story. Those few hours could have saved hundreds of lives. Back on the Titanic, the end was coming quickly. By 2:00 a.m., the bow had sunk deep into the water, and the stern was rising high into the air. The remaining passengers huddled on the stern, terrifying near vertical slope. The ship's lights flickered one last time, and then went out, plunging everyone into complete darkness. The immense stress on the ship's hull became too much to bear. With the sound described by survivors as a deafening roar of tearing metal, the Titanic broke in two between the third and fourth funnels. The forward section, now completely filled with water, plunged beneath the waves, dragging the still connected stern section vertical. For a moment, the stern stood perpendicular to the ocean, a black silhouette against the starry sky, before it too began its final descent. At 2:20 a.m. on April 15, 1912, less than 3 hours after hitting the iceberg, the RMS Titanic vanished completely beneath the surface of the Atlantic Ocean. For the more than 1,500 people left struggling in the water, the situation was hopeless. The ocean temperature was a deadly 28 degrees Fahrenheit below freezing. Hypothermia would set in within minutes. Their cries for help filled the night air, a sound that would haunt the survivors in the lifeboats for the rest of their lives. Only one lifeboat returned to the scene to pick up more survivors, but by then, it was too late for most. They managed to pull only a handful of people from the water alive. The rest were silenced by the cold. When the Carpathia finally arrived at dawn, they found a grim scene. Lifeboats scattered across a calm sea, dotted with the bodies of those who hadn't made it. The rescue ship picked up the 705 survivors, the only ones who escaped the disaster. The world awoke to the shocking news. The unsinkable ship was gone, and with it, over 1,500 souls. The sinking of the Titanic was a profound shock to the world. It shattered the era's confidence in technological progress and exposed a fatal combination of arrogance, outdated regulations, and human error. In the aftermath, inquiries were held in both the United States and Britain. The disaster led to major reforms in maritime safety. New regulations required all ships to carry enough lifeboats for everyone on board, mandated 24-hour radio watches, and led to the formation of the International Ice Patrol to monitor icebergs in the North Atlantic. For decades, the exact location of the Titanic remained a mystery. It wasn't until 1985 that a team led by Dr. Robert Ballard finally discovered the wreck, lying on the ocean floor 2.5 miles down. The images of the ship, its grand staircase gone, its deck covered in rusticles, were haunting. They showed a ghost ship, a tombstone for a bygone era. Today, the story of the Titanic continues to fascinate us. It's a story of human ambition and failure, of heroism and cowardice, of stark class divisions, and of a single night when the modern world's faith in its own creations was forever shaken. It reminds us that no matter how advanced our technology becomes, we are always at the mercy of nature and our own fallibility. The Titanic is more than just a shipwreck. It's a powerful human story that serves as a timeless cautionary tale. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the story of the Titanic. It's a tragedy that continues to teach us valuable lessons even today. If you found this story as compelling as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more historical mysteries. Let me know in the comments what part of the Titanic story fascinates you the most. Stay curious, and I'll see you in the next video.